Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Deal. Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real World Headquarters to talk about censorship. Censorship is real, and it's killing us, and I want to talk about how freedom of speech is so important. It's our most fundamental human right, and if we don't fight for this now, we might find out that we might never have it again. And I really want to talk about this subject. It's something that London Real has had a massive education in the last 7 months. I never thought that I would be censored. I thought only weirdos and wackos and conspiracy theorists were censored, but that's not true. Censorship is happening all the time. The worst part is you don't even know when it's happening. And I want to talk about our adventures this year when it comes to censorship, why I think it's so important, why I think speaking your truth is a fundamental human right, and why I think it's necessary to have all points of view considered so they can be debated, and so the best idea wins. And if you look at the greatest emergence of humanity and the greatest emergence of technology over the years, it's always come from new ideas and an open and honest debate. It's never come from the suppression of ideas, and I want to talk about that today. So thank you for coming. We are streaming live now on multiple social platforms, and I want to hear from you first. So first of all, please type in the chat right now, because all your answers are coming to me right now on my iPad. First of all, do you think censorship is wrong, and why? Second question I want you to answer for me is, do you believe the fact checkers? These are the people we see on Facebook and Instagram that check the facts. And my question is, who checks the fact checkers? That's the other question as well. Next, do you think as an adult that you should have the right to consume any type of information you want? Or do you think you should be protected from dangerous content? Should you be protected, is my question to you. Next, do you trust our social media companies to tell you the truth? And finally, do we need better leadership? So please type those answers right now, no matter what platform you're in. They're going to come here, and I want to try to figure them out and get them right back to you. And I really appreciate that. So let's get started with why freedom of speech matters. But before we do, let me give you a little bit of an update on what is happening here at London Real World Headquarters. Because if you haven't been paying attention, 17 days ago, we decided to run for mayor of London. And I want to give you an update on that. We decided after months and months of really thinking hard about what was important to us as a company, what was important to me, and thinking about our mission to really transform the world with these incredible ideas. We looked at the political landscape in this country, and we couldn't sit by. We couldn't sit idly by and watch the current crop of politicians with their vested interests and their careers in politics run this city into the ground. And so I made a decision, quite frankly, that I didn't want to make. And that was that I was going to stand for the next mayor of London. Not only that, but we were going to win. And so that is our plan. The election is May 6th of next year, and on May 7th, we plan to move to City Hall and start making intelligent decisions for the 9 million citizens in London. And it's quite simple what we want to do. We've actually got quite a detailed set of policies that you can go find out on our website. But quite simply this, we want to show real leadership and get London back to work. Next, we want to show and have a proportional response to the virus. That means protect those that are vulnerable, but allow everyone else to get back to their lives and work and create the great economy that we all use to provide for our families. And the third thing is start making science-based decisions. Science-based decisions, which I haven't seen a science-based decision in the last couple months in this country. Everything seems to be completely without science, whether it comes to shutting down hospitality venues or gyms, et cetera, et cetera. None of it is based on science. And so those are the basic things that I'm going to do as your next mayor of London. We are so excited, and we're excited by the response. Last week when I was on Real Deal with you, we had just announced, and when I finished the show, we found out that the bookmakers here in London, the one that place all the sports bets and all the political bets, had put us out there as the next mayor of London. And they had said we had I think 100 to 1 chance, is what they said. And I thought that was kind of funny. First of all, it was fascinating because we were in third place immediately, which makes us the highest ranking independent candidate in the history of the race for mayor of London. So we've already proved to the world that we're serious and we're already a contender. But over the course of the next 48 hours, it was fascinating for me to watch those odds go from 101 to 50 to 1 to 25 to 1 to 20 to 1 to 16 to 1 to now in some bookies we're 10 to 1 and we're about to take second place. That is incredible, and that's really a testament to all of you out there. So I appreciate the support. I appreciate you sharing these videos and sharing these messages. I appreciate everybody coming to the site. I appreciate the volunteers we've already had, the donations we've already had, but just the support. I was out yesterday in Spitalfields Market, and people were coming up to me, giving me hugs and shaking my hand and saying, Brian, we know you are going to change this city for the better. You're the only person talking sense. We've got to get this city back to work. So again, it's just been a complete honor. It's been so humbling to get the support from all of you, and we appreciate it. And I want to just say to people that haven't got the message yet, we are very serious about this race. We plan on winning. And if you've watched me over the last 9 years, you'll realize something about me, which is this. I don't do half measures. I don't. If I'm going to run an Ironman race, I'm going to finish. You know, if I'm going to create a conversation with a guest, it's going to look like this. You know, if I'm going to make a documentary film, it's going to blow your mind. And so if anyone knows anything about London Real or me, they know we're going to win this race. And the truth is that there's no choice but us, because the other two members that are going to try to run on the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, they are both saying the same message, which is they're fear-mongering, shutting down the economy. They're career politicians with vested interests that have never run a business, never been fiscally responsible, and never held anyone accountable. We need new ideas. We need fresh blood. We need new leadership. I want to take London in a new direction, and I want to make this city world-class once again. And I know we can do it. As a matter of fact, I think we can lead the world when it comes to showing them how we can get back to work, do it in a safe manner, get our young people motivated again, and I'm so excited. So thank you all for the support. If you want to make some easy money, and I don't condone betting, go into those bookies and hit those bids because those odds are going all the way to 1-to-1 and probably even better pretty soon. And honestly, to the other two candidates running, I suggest you put some money on us as well, because you're going to be out of a job soon and you're going to need a little something to just, pay the bills for the next few months when you figure out your next move. So that's my advice to you. And let's jump into today's point, because it's super important, and censorship is something that's very, very important to me. And I want to first talk about, why does freedom of speech matter? And I was forced to really go deep in myself this year and ask myself questions about freedom of speech, because I had never had my freedom of speech taken away until earlier this year. And I'll cover everything that happened to us in the next section. I grew up in California, in America, and where I'm from, freedom of speech, it's like in my DNA. Everybody is free to speak their mind. And it's the same here in the UK, at least I thought it used to be. And I've lived here now for 20 years, and I've always felt this is a place where we could always speak our minds. You might not agree with someone, but I will defend to the death your right to say it, period. I might not agree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it, so we can have an open and an honest debate, and the best idea wins. That's always marked the upsurge of human civilization since the dawn of time. And so when I looked even deeper into freedom of speech, I started to really understand what was happening with this, because I think it's our most basic, fundamental, human civil right to speak our minds. But we always haven't had that right. I think we've kind of gotten used to the fact that we have it. And so I actually went back in history to really understand what it was all about. And the first thing that you might think about that gets quoted all the time is the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And in 1791, the original Constitution was amended with what I call new technology, things they hadn't thought of. And one of the first things they did, again, the First Amendment to that Constitution, was to say that Congress shall make no law prohibiting or abridging the freedom of speech. Again, it's the First Amendment. It's not the 5th, the 10th, or the 20th. It's the first. Very important in the early stages of the United States that they made sure people could speak their mind, because they knew if you couldn't, it could lead down some very dark times. On top of that, the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 10 states, quote, "Everyone has the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers." Very important. Finally, the United Nations, created in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, states in Article 19, quote, "We all have the right to make up our own minds, to think what we like, to say what we like, and share our ideas with other people." Again, these are in our DNA in Western civilization, and we assumed they were true. And if you look back through some of the big events in history, what would have happened if people hadn't have spoken their minds? Look at the Magna Carta in 1215, right? That said that everybody, including the king, was subject to law, right? That changed the course of everything in this country and everything in the Western world. Next, what if Martin Luther was never able to nail his theses to the door in 1517 in Europe? What would have happened? We wouldn't have had an entire evolution of human thought. What if the founding fathers of America had never created the Declaration of Independence in 1776? Again, it was them putting out new ideas that were controversial. What if Martin Luther King could have never given his "I Have a Dream" speech on the Washington Mall in 1963? What if he had never given that speech? Would we have had the civil rights reforms that we saw? These are crucial moments in human history where if we didn't allow someone to speak their minds, or they didn't speak it anyways, regardless of the repercussions, we still might be stuck in the Middle Ages, quite literally. And that's why this stuff is so important. And I wanted to give you that history lesson because a lot of people today don't know the history. They don't know it's a right because they've always assumed it's there. And when you start taking your liberties for granted and you start giving them away piece by piece, which is what we're doing today with our digital platforms, and I'll come to that, pretty soon you're going to wake up one day and you'll realize that you're in a society you don't like, where you can't say what you want, you can't think what you want, you can't do what you want, because those rights have been taken away from you. And that's actually what's been happening in 2020, and I want to get into it more. I want to ask you a question right now. Do you think, be honest with me, as an adult, that you should have the right to consume any information you want? Or do you think someone like the government or your social media platforms should protect you from consuming dangerous information? That's my question for you. So type in the chat right now. Tell me what you want to think. I get stopped on the streets all the time and people say, "Brian, I just want to make my own decision." Or someone will stop me in the streets and say, "Brian, one of your guests, I think they're crazy." I'm like, great, you got to make that opinion because you got to listen to them. If it was up to our government and our social platforms, you would have never even seen that video. And so again, it's all about choice, and it's all about your choice. And so while you're typing those questions in, please tell me what you think as well. Again, tell me also, is freedom of speech important? Do you think censorship is wrong? And while you're doing that, I want to play a short video clip of a discussion I had with Dave Rubin, who hosts the Dave Rubin Show, super popular in America. And I was speaking to him about freedom of speech earlier this year on our digital freedom platform. And this was his take on the concept of freedom of speech.
So from an American perspective, look, we have the First Amendment here, which guarantees our ability to say basically whatever we want. I think that the First Amendment is probably the greatest sort of man-made, written, codified piece of legislation that has ever been written down on a piece of paper. The idea that you can say what you want, you are free to think what you want, you are free to worship how you wish to worship or not worship if you don't wish to worship, the fact that you can protest your government. These are wickedly amazing things that our founding fathers put into law and made the First Amendment, right? I mean, this isn't the Seventh Amendment, this is the First Amendment. Now, of course, in the United States, there are very, very limited parameters around that, meaning you can't call for direct violence to a person or a group of people. You can't just say, "Oh, let's go get those guys and kill them," or rally up troops to go kill people. So I think most of us can get on board that. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater with the intent of stirring up a mob. That's actually an important distinction because technically you can yell fire in a crowded theater if it was a joke or something like that, but with the intent of creating chaos, you cannot do it. That's just like a little bit of an extra thing that a lot of people don't know, a little asterisk there. And then, of course, we have extremely, extremely stringent, tight laws about libel and slander that you can't destroy people's reputations, but the laws around them are so tight that they're almost never used. It's very rarely used. So I think we have done what I would say are the best modern protections around freedom, period. Now, what you're referring to specifically, so I did hear about this interview being censored a few weeks back. I don't know the specifics of it, so I don't want to comment on the specifics of the topic necessarily. But in terms of sort of big tech censorship, what we're now dealing with is there's a secondary layer. So the government can say, hey, you can do whatever you want. That's just fine. But the way we all communicate now, whether it's streaming on YouTube or talking on Twitter or going on Facebook or Instagram or any of these giant platforms, this has become the new way we communicate. And, there is an argument that, we need to treat these things like the phone company. In other words, everyone can have a phone in their house in the UK and in the United States, and in most free countries, you can have a phone in your house. They can't take away your phone depending on if they like what you're talking about or not. Now, so that's a little bit more of a regulation, a government regulation argument. I actually don't love that argument because I fundamentally, and this is more my libertarian side, I fundamentally believe in human ingenuity. I fundamentally believe in competition. I believe that giant things that seem too big to fail almost always fail. Giant companies of the past that we thought were these monolithic things that would rule us forever, they crumble, then new ones come. Google will not always be Google. Amazon will not always be Amazon. Now, we do have a particularly unique situation right now because big tech looms so large over every part of our lives because of our phones that are in our pockets and microphones and cameras, and the fact that Google owns YouTube. Google's the #1 search engine. YouTube's the #2 search engine. They also, Facebook owns Instagram. Like, there really has become this giant business structure that is hard to also figure out, is that connected to the government? Is it the government? I mean, I think these are all interesting things to talk about. My personal preference would be that we find other ways around it using our mind, using our creativity, and that by being sort of small and nimble, that we can solve the big tech problem, as opposed to saying to the government, hey, you giant government have to fix this other giant problem, because then you just take two giant things and make them bigger. And, to take something from the Bible, it's like, well, David beat Goliath, right? So maybe Dave can beat Google. That's what I always say about this. So I think there are solutions. We could probably spend 8 hours talking about tech censorship and the arguments on either side. Believe me, I hear plenty of good arguments for the regulation side of this too. And maybe there's a happy medium in there somewhere. But with an American election ramping up and everything else, it's like, this is in many ways, I think you could make an argument that this is a bigger issue than coronavirus in many ways.
And there was David Rubin. I really appreciate his thoughts. And it was great having him and so many other people on our digital freedom platform this year to talk about freedom of speech. Again, we couldn't stream that on other platforms, and I'll talk about that shortly. Great comments coming in. I really appreciate them. And wherever you're watching us right now, please type your comments in and tell me, do you think censorship is real? Is freedom of speech important? And do you think as an adult you should have the right to choose what you consume and what you put in your brain? I really appreciate these comments. Girls Farm on IG says freedom of speech is being systematically destroyed. Pedro Silva says, once you lose freedom of speech, all other rights will follow. I couldn't agree more with you, brother. Simple Letter L on IG says censorship is wrong and the fact checkers are paid for by the social platforms to control the content. So true. The film that we streamed on our digital freedom platform, Plandemic 2, talks about how the fact checkers are actually a lot of these big organizations that have their own agendas as well. Liquid Light on IG says, do not trust our social media at all. The Pensive Place also says no trust in social media platforms. Teresa on IG says, yes, censorship is wrong. Freedom of speech is our birthright. You are so right, Teresa. I appreciate your thoughts. Aries suggests you are the only one who I trust at this point. Thank you, Aries. We've been blessed to set up this digital freedom platform, and I'll get into that shortly, the genesis of that. Lee says censorship is a violation of our rights. Yoga Cherry says exactly. Who fact checks the fact checkers? Great question there. Allison on IG says censorship is wrong, which is great. And Dunia says that she said, loved your Reconnect YouTube movie recently. Thank you so much for that. It gets further. Emma Burwash says, Brian for mayor. Thank you, Emma. I appreciate that. It's very humbling. Teresa says the thing. Same thing. Mayor Brian, yes. Sean also saying Brian for mayor. Steven says, my support is with you. You are a father that this world needs. You inspire me to be the person that speaks my mind. Love you, brother. Steve, I love you back, man, and thank you so much. Again, I feel like I'm running for the 9 million people in this city, and I feel like when I'm elected, we are elected. We will all move into that office together, and we'll start acting in the interests of our citizens, period. Period. And I don't think that's ever been done for in the office of mayor in this country, and that's what we plan on doing. So I appreciate the comments. If you're coming in late, we're talking about censorship here. It's really important, and I want to get your thoughts. So again, type in the chat right now. Tell me, do you think censorship is wrong and why? Do you believe the fact checkers and who checks the fact checkers? Do you think an adult should have the right to consume the information they choose? Do you trust our social media companies to tell the truth? And finally, do we need better leadership? So let's talk about part two I'm going to go into here, which is our experience being censored this year. 2020 was a whirlwind experience here at London Real, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. At London Real, for 8 years, we had successfully broadcast conversations right here in the studio, me in the chair, the guest in another chair, unedited, uncensored, unscripted for 8 years, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations, and I never had a single problem. And it wasn't until this year where we started getting censored and then banned and deleted and deplatformed from every single social media platform. Why? Why did that happen? Like I said, I thought that happened to the crazy people, to the weirdos, to the conspiracy theorists. That's what I thought. But this year in 2020, because it's such a strange year and there's so many strange agendas floating around, for the first time, we've actually perturbed the matrix in a way, and we can see all of these agendas come out of the woodwork, whereas before maybe we couldn't see, or maybe we were just too focused on our lives and business as usual. But now we've got lockdowns, we've got viruses, we've got elections, we've got lots of strange agendas out there, and now we can kind of see that the government, the mainstream media, and our social platforms don't have freedom of speech in mind. They don't have our interests in mind, and I want to talk about that. So earlier this year, on March 16th, I decided to have someone on my show. His name was David Icke. I had had David on the show twice before. I knew David was very controversial, but strange times sometimes need strange solutions. And I thought, if there's anybody that can try to make sense of what's going on, and keep in mind, we hadn't yet been locked down here in this country. There were whispers of it. But people were really starting to get scared. They were starting to get freaked out. Again, it was March 16th of this year, and I brought David on the show. And I found, when I sat him here, and we had a 2.5-hour conversation, again, unscripted, uncensored, unedited, everyone in the world craved his opinion. And how do I know that? Because it went from 1 million views to 2 million views to 3 million views to 4 million views in a matter of days. I got contacted from people all around the world that had watched it, that had shared it. This thing literally went viral. It was the fastest growing video in our history on London Real. Now, why is that? That's because people wanted to watch it. That's why. That's the reason. So people desired it. They wanted to put the information in their brain. As an adult, you have sovereignty over your own body. You should be allowed to choose whatever you want to put in your brain and in your body, in my opinion. And so people wanted it, and they wanted to consume it. Fair enough. That's what we do here. We give people content, and I thought that wouldn't be a problem. And so as things got stranger and we got locked down here in the UK, and people got more scared about a virus, about how it would be transmitted, about if millions of people would die, I brought David back on April 6th of this year, and we streamed on YouTube. And it ended up being the second largest YouTube live stream in the world that day, second behind Donald Trump's coronavirus briefing at the White House that day. We were number 2. That show would have gone on to be watched 30 or 40 million times based on the previous show's metrics. It was 4 times the size of the previous live stream, and the previous episode did 10 million views. This would have been the most watched video podcast in human history. Just a little bit more watched than Joe Rogan, Elon Musk at 37 million views. That's what we estimated. We had the conversation. It was absolutely epic. And I was sitting outside with David Icke, and we were like, wow, that was an amazing knowledge. The whole team here was like, man, it was incredible. People were giving us money in the stream on YouTube. We'd never asked for donations, and people were giving us money. They were sharing it. Again, it was massive. And 30 minutes later, that video was deleted and banned on YouTube, and we started our journey of being censored. I had never been censored before in my life on our social platforms. Again, 500 million views from our content, right? 8,000 videos, a 9-year relationship with YouTube where we made them millions of dollars in advertising revenues. And then they decided to pull the plug on us. And so we started this adventure, and you probably know what happened. I did lots of vlogs. We made lots of commentary. We started getting written up in all sorts of mainstream media criticizing us for exercising our right to free speech. It boggled my mind that this could even be happening, but YouTube tried to clamp down on us. They said we were violating community policies, that we were COVID deniers, all sorts of other crazy thing happens. And so we made a split-second decision, which was this. We are going to fight back, period. That's what we decided to do. We decided to fight back and fight for our basic human right for free speech. And that's what we did. And when YouTube decided not to allow us to continue posting and broadcasting on our platform, we decided we were going to do it anyways. So on May 3rd of this year, we decided to live stream our 3rd episode with David Icke this year. We called it Rose Icke 3. And since we couldn't do it on YouTube because we were going to be banned, censored, and deleted, we had to create our own digital streaming platform. And we had about 11 days to do it. Keep in mind, this is during lockdown when everything else is closed, right? You couldn't even set up a funding campaign on GoFundMe or any of these other things because they were all shut down. So I reached out to London Reelers around the world and said, I need your help, something I'd never asked for in 9 years. I'd never asked for a single dollar of donations, but I knew we couldn't do it alone. We couldn't spread the word, we couldn't build the technology, and I knew we had to have this 3rd conversation with David just to show the world, to show the governments, to show the social media platforms, these trillion-dollar technology companies, that we would fight for our basic human right. Again, I might disagree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it. And we had to show them that we would not lay down. We had to show them that we would not take a knee, that we would not bow our heads, that we would not kowtow to their ridiculous community policies that are in the interests of our citizens. No. And so thanks to all of the incredible people around the world, we now call the London Reel Army, who donated $1 million, now $1.5 million. We created our own live streaming digital platform. I can't ever explain how difficult it was to do that. We're actually making a documentary film about it so you can see everything that happened behind the scenes. It was so difficult because hosting a video is one thing, but live streaming a video to what became the largest live stream of a human conversation on May 3rd, we broke the record at over 1 million unique people from around the world watched this stream. And we made it happen with some serious technology partners. Some of them dropped us at the last minute when they found out that it was controversial content. But we made it happen in the studio, and it was an epic day. And I appreciate everyone's support. And we drew a line in the sand, and we said, guess what? We are not going to accept your censorship. And we don't care if you take away my business, if you take away our reputations, but we are going to fight back. And it was an incredible moment. And the Digital Freedom Platform was born. And we took this platform, and anyone that was going to be banned or censored or deleted on YouTube or other social platforms, we streamed on this platform. And over the course of the next 6 months, I think we've had 30 or 40 or 50 guests on this platform, from doctors, nurses, scientists, Nobel Prize winners, Professor Emeritus at MIT, Noam Chomsky, 4-star generals. These are the people we weren't allowed to stream on YouTube. Tell me how that works. A Nobel Prize winner isn't allowed to speak his mind on YouTube. Professor Emeritus at MIT, one of the most esteemed institutions in the world that I was honored to go to, not allowed on YouTube. A 4-star general can't speak his mind on YouTube. How does that make sense? We had to create our own censorship-free digital platform that is of the people, by the people, for the people. And we stream content on there that is still currently available. And we got attacked maliciously. They tried to close us down. They shut down all our payment platforms. Trust me, it's been a fight every single day, but we did it, and we delivered on our promise. And the cherry on top was when we created the largest live stream of a documentary film in human history. We did the world premiere of Plandemic 2, the documentary, and again, blew all those numbers out of the water. Millions of unique users, and that film is still on the Digital Freedom Platform and is still one of our most watched pieces to date. All of that content remains uncensored and is free to you today at freedomplatform.tv. By the way, that URL was censored on Facebook during the live stream of Plandemic 2. So Mark Zuckerberg, maybe you can answer for that, why you decided to not allow that information to be out there. And one of the things I want to talk about on this live streaming platform is this, and it's one specific interview that I want to highlight. You might remember back in March of April of this year, Professor Neil Ferguson of Imperial College projected with his computer model that 2 million people would die in America because of coronavirus, and 500,000 people would die here in the UK. And that's what he projected. And at the time, Professor Michael Levitt of Stanford University came out and said, actually, that figure's not right. It's actually 1/10 of those numbers that we're really looking at. We're looking at maybe a maximum of 50,000 people are going to die in the UK. That's what a Stanford professor, a Nobel Prize winner, said at the same time, who was not allowed to be listened to by our governments, not allowed to be listened to by our social media platforms, but we streamed his ideas on the Digital Freedom Platform. If we had listened to him, how many lives could we have saved? How much of this economy could we have saved, which would have saved lives through mental health, physical health, maybe saved a bunch of people that couldn't get access to health care at the NHS. But because our government censored us, because we were censored on YouTube and social platforms, people died that didn't have to die. And I'll say this right now, YouTube, you have blood on your hands because your censorship policies are not only inconvenient and unconstitutional and immoral and inhuman, but they cost lives this year. And that's something you're going to have to answer for one day. And I say this very seriously, and it's something to really consider. Because these trillion-dollar technology companies with their agendas of censorship and a lot of their leftist agendas are shutting up the real truth from happening. And just to go further and show you how real it was, YouTube shut us down and continues to try to shut us down. And so they gave us what's called a content strike about 120 days ago, where they shut us down for a week and basically said you are one upload away from completely being deplatformed, deleted, and erased. That's 9 years of my life, 9,000 videos, 500 million views being deleted from the internet forever. I don't even think that's moral to literally delete my digital identity like that. And they gave us a strike for some video that had been up there for years. And I thought that was over. We waited 90 days and the strike was removed. And then you'll see from this screenshot here, a few weeks ago, they gave us another content strike. And this is from 2 short 4 or 5 minute videos of me speaking to Alex Jones on his show and me talking about the concepts of freedom of speech. Nothing in there violates their community standards. Nothing in there violates their COVID policies. Nothing in there violates their vaccine policies, which are all, again, unconstitutional, inhuman, immoral, ridiculous anyways. But they gave us a strike for that. And they shut us down for a week. No live streaming, no uploading. And right now they've said, Brian, one more mistake and you're going forever. So they have this fear. They're constantly trying to scare us and put us in fear. They also removed us from the YouTube Partner Program. They removed all our monetizations. And the truth is that would be enough to get most creators to bow their head, to take the knee, and to start censoring themselves. But we refuse to do that. So nice try, YouTube. And again, at any moment right now, they might delete us and censor us. But we're here to say we're going to continue fighting. But this is what happens behind the scenes. I don't talk about this all the time because I don't like to whine and complain, and I'm not a victim, because I take ownership and responsibility for this, and we're going to move forward regardless. But not only have we been censored on YouTube, Facebook has censored us. They've censored our URLs. They've censored our content. They've banned us from running ads on their platform, even when they make Facebook $30,000, $40,000 a month. We've been shadow banned from Instagram. You currently can't find us on Instagram unless you type in our exact name. Our views are completely in the toilet. Our likes are, you can barely see us. We've been completely deplatformed from LinkedIn. Dropbox completely shut us down, which means they were watching our videos on that platform, on their platform, and shut us down. PayPal shut us down. Dailymotion shut us down. Vimeo shut us down. Twitter suspended us. And Ofcom, the regulator here in the UK, censored a television station for playing our Rose Ike 2 episode. So this is what we're dealing with. Censorship is real. I could write a book about censorship. And again, there will be a movie about this soon. But I wanted to let you know what's going on behind the scenes. So I want to hear from you. If you're watching here, first of all, I appreciate you being here. It's a really important, and I need your help in spreading this word. Do you think censorship is wrong, and why? Do you believe the fact checkers, and who checks the fact checkers? Do you think as an adult that you should be able to decide the information you consume and put in your brain? Do you trust the social media platforms to tell you the truth? And do we need better leadership? So while you're typing those in, I want to play a video of of John Cleese from Monty Python, talking about freedom of speech. And this is from an interview I had with him recently where I explained to him how we were being censored, and you can see John's reaction. Here he is. And I wanted to start off and talk a little bit about censorship because it's something you've talked about for a long time, but I didn't really feel it until April of this year when we started having conversations with people, and we had a narrative that was different than the mainstream media, different than the government, and we were censored on the technology platforms. Ofcom wouldn't allow our programs to be put on television. We were attacked by the BBC and a lot of publications. And it was a really bumpy ride, John. And
I understand a lot of this. Let me ask you a couple of questions. You've been doing this for 9 years.
Yeah, 9 years. Didn't have a
8 years without any problems. And then in April, you did something that was not on the beaten track. And you got which, can I ask, what did people complain about?
Well, what happened is we started the lockdown here, and the government was kind of saying this is what's happening. And we started asking questions about, are we sure of the details? And let's talk about the science. And we started having different conversations than the government and the mainstream media was having. And as opposed to just have those ideas out there, free speech, to let people decide for themselves, we got shut down. It was almost like they were treating our viewers not like adults, but almost as children that had to be protected.
But can I ask you, were they criticizing you, or were they actually shutting you down so that you couldn't broadcast?
Well, great question. So YouTube, which is, the biggest really video streaming platform in the world, on April 6th, John, we did the second largest YouTube live stream in the world. So it was massive. 65,000 people were watching concurrently.
Why was it so big?
Because we were talking about ideas that were different than the government. We were asking the government, okay, tell us more about this. Why do we have to lock down? Is it really the right thing to do? And what happened is 30 minutes later, the episode was deleted, and then we were banned from continuing to stream on YouTube. So it was really interesting to see the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the YouTubes really shut us down. And it was my first introduction, John, to this world of censorship and mainstream media attacks. So it was a real introduction for me to this whole new world that I think you've been talking about for a long time.
Yes, but you see, because I'm a comedian and therefore what I do isn't serious, I don't think anybody's ever got to the point of closing me down. I mean, sometimes they get upset because somebody said a word, like a recent thing with the Major on 40 Towers, but nobody's ever closed me down. It seems to me at first sight to be an absolute disgrace. I mean, the whole point of a democracy, of a society where people feel free to live their own lives and to express their own thoughts, so not being allowed to challenge the government, is an absolute disgrace. And there seems to be at the moment a wave of authoritarianism all over the world, whether you look at Russia or China or India or Israel, but now even here. I mean, we knew it was always the case in America.
And there was John Cleese, had an incredible conversation with him, and he really believes freedom of speech is a fundamental human right. Again, I want to hear from you, so type in the comments wherever platform you're watching on this now and tell me what you think. Some great comments coming in here. I really appreciate all these comments. I've never seen so many comments on a live stream. We've got Nine Tails says, censorship is wrong. It's an invasion. We need better leadership. Brian Rose for mayor. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Elizabeth on Instagram says, quote, I am a content moderator on a digital platform. Censorship is real, more than people think. Wow, that's chilling, Elizabeth. Please send me a direct message on email. I want to talk to you more. Some other great things coming out here. Paul HW says, hitting the nail on the head. Brian Rose. Hendricks says, censorship is like telling a man he can have meat because a baby can't chew it. I love that concept, Again, you should allow an adult who almost by definition has sovereignty over their own body to make the choice is really important. Akasha says freedom of speech all the way. Johnny Writing says, yes, information should not be censored. I couldn't agree with you more. Hysteria says, I want the choice to make my own decisions. Of course you do. Grant on IG commented that adults should be able to digest any information they feel is of value. I completely agree. Martine says, quote, we need an honest global news that shares the evidence truth, not a nefarious official narrative. It's so right. And if you look at our mainstream media, they just bark and repeat the same messages from the government. They're all co-opted. Don't get me started about the BBC here, which is funded by the government. All they do is repeat what the government says. It's not independent news, and that just makes it not news. Helen Prince says, asks if we can have freedom and autonomy for all. Thank you for your bravery, your voice of the people. Thank you very much, Helen. I'm just doing what feels natural to me. The Happy Few says freedom of speech is essential to human survival. The Liberated Mama, great name by the way, says yes to freedom of choice. They need to stop censorship. And Ethel Nina says, yes, we should have free access to information so we can make our own decisions. I appreciate this. And finally, Christopher Brank says, ideas can't be dangerous. Only people can be. People who are in the state of love can never be dangerous. And I couldn't agree with you more. And the funny thing about that, Christopher, is if you look at the end of all of my conversations with David Icke, he says this. He says, make decisions based out of love, not fear. And he says, make up your own mind. Don't listen to what I have to say. That's always missed a lot of times. And that's what a lot of what we're doing here is trying to suggest that. Let's make decisions out of love. Again, ideas can't be dangerous. And that's a super important point to make. So look, I want to make my last and third final point here, which is really important because we've got to move forward to address this issue and fight back against technology. Because now I want to provide a solution. Anyone can come up with a problem. I am here to provide solutions. And that's been the evolution of myself, Brian Rose, and London Real over the past 3 or 4 weeks when we had a major shift change here at London Real. And we said, guess what? Anyone can come up with problems. Only real leaders can come up with solutions. And so instead of complaining about censorship, instead of talking about how the government should change, instead of creating our open letter, which has been signed almost 250,000 times by you, demanding the legislation of digital freedom of speech, we decided that we were going to put our money where our mouth was. We decided we were going to stop talking the talk and start walking the walk. And we said, what can we do to affect the quickest change possible? And that was to run for mayor. And that's why we made that decision. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. This is the most inconvenient thing that could happen to me right now. Okay? London Real is busier than ever, right? Our broadcasts are being watched more than ever. Our academy is busier than ever. We're making documentary films. We've got so much important things to do here, to tell the world, to broadcast, to transform humanity. Honestly, being mayor stops all that. It means I can't do all those things. But we've also decided that we need to be of service. And I can't think of anyone else that can do this job right now. And if we don't do it, who else will? Who else will stand up and lead? Not our current crop of politicians and this supposed two-party system that bark back and forth at each other and point the finger while you and I suffer. And that's why we need new blood. We need new leadership. We need a new direction for London. We need someone who's run a business before. We need someone who has stood up and fought against censorship. We need someone with new ideas that can also hold the city fiscally responsible, that can hold people accountable, and that can talk about moving us forward, getting us back to work, a proportional response to the virus, science-based decision-making, health first, education first, digital first. These are parts of our platform. These are our policies, and that's why we are moving forward with it. And again, I wrote this open letter demanding the legislation of digital freedom of speech. And that might mean breaking up our technology companies. It definitely means holding those companies accountable to respect the laws of the land they operate in. The last time I checked here in the European Union, we have a law that protects freedom of speech. The last time I checked in America, according to the First Amendment, freedom of speech is guaranteed by the Constitution. Then how come these companies can continue to violate not only the law, but our basic fundamental human rights? They do it because they're bigger than governments. We've never seen anything like our digital platforms. Google was brought before Congress recently, and I think it was Senator Ted Cruz said, Google is the most powerful company we've ever seen in human existence. It's more powerful than any company in human history, and it is controlling us, and it needs to be watched, monitored, and regulated. And I can't agree more. By becoming your next mayor of London, I can make this happen fast. By May 7th, we will already start taking measures to make sure that digital freedom of speech is legislated. And these companies can no longer censor you on any platform. And by being the mayor of London, we can make that happen faster than anything I'm doing behind the scenes, which, by the way, is taking lawsuits against Facebook and YouTube and doing all the things we're doing behind the scenes. But this is the fastest way possible. And this is one of the main reasons we are running for mayor. But also, we're also running because we're tired of watching this city of London being run into the ground by these career politicians with their vested interests and strange agendas which only seem to be revolved around them getting elected again and again and again. And so that's why I'm running for mayor of London. This is going to be one of my cornerstone policies. I've already articulated it, and I promise to you that freedom of speech on our digital platforms will happen under my terms in office. And that's why I'm so confident that we're going to be elected, because this is something that's on everyone's mind, and I'm very excited for it. And I want to play a video for you now of an incredible conversation I had with an incredible man. And his name is Lord Michael Farmer. And he is in the House of Lords, which is one of our parliamentary bodies here in the UK. And actually, they're responsible for some very, very important legislation. And Lord Farmer has done tireless work when it comes to putting our families first. And Lord Farmer has discovered that if you keep a family structure together, it can save the UK economy up to £50 billion per year. It can reduce crime. It can reduce housing needs in this country. It can reduce the strain on the government when it comes to our social services. So this is a really important piece. And I'm so glad that Lord Farmer came and spoke about some of the issues that were on his mind. One of the biggest ones was Lord Farmer talking about how maybe now is the time to start really holding our digital platforms to task and potentially making sure that they don't break our laws when it comes to freedom of speech. So let me play for you this short clip of Lord Farmer talking about these digital companies and how they must respect our freedom of speech, and if they don't, how regulation is what is necessary. Here he is.
Facebook, Twitter, and I mean, I thankfully I'm not on those things, but the whole social media area, the taking down of people from these sites is, you know, they have this fact check, don't they? All right. Well, who checks the facts and who's making those decisions? And are these social media companies actually publishers? Are they censoring? It seems that way. It looks that way. It probably is that way. And I think governments are waking up to the fact that they are publishers, not just a social media platform. And if they are a publisher, they will be subject to completely different legislation. I think that's coming down the road, and you know, it's something that they need to be aware of.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially when all of those platforms seem to all have the same political persuasion.
I know.
And it slants that way.
I know.
And look, we've seen some antitrust action happening with Google, which might lead to this. Yeah. But I mean, I'll be honest, for 8.5 years, I published conversations online and never had a single problem until April of this year. And now things are regularly censored.
Why is that?
Exactly.
Well, it's a presidential election, that's why.
Yes. And like you said, where do these rules come from? Yeah. And there's a community policy. Yeah. That's very subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
Hate speech, that can be applied to anything.
Yeah, I know.
And like you said, fact checkers, who funds these people. It's actually usually 1 degree of separation from somebody involved in a left-wing supporting group. Do you think government should at some point step in? And
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they have to. I mean, it is censorship, and the antitrust suit. I mean, the whole area of the social media dominance. It's sort of getting like a sort of Rockefeller Standard Oil type thing, where you're going to have to a breakup of the dominance that's there on the internet. So I think governments, it is the duty of government actually, because you're actually getting these companies taking over the role of government in some respects, taking powers away from government. And, I think I sense it in Parliament. We have debates, we pass laws and everything else, but actually what's happening? What's happening on social media? That's actually affecting the life outside of here far more than what we're doing in there. If you're government, you should be wary of that, because they aren't elected. They aren't elected. They choose themselves, and they impose themselves, their values on us without us asking them to.
Yeah.
And that needs to be challenged.
Yeah. They're more powerful than governments these days.
Yeah, they are.
And as opposed to the steel industry and the oil industry, and the telecommunications industry, which we broke up in the past, this pervades, your own digital identity.
Exactly.
And our kids these days don't know the difference between their identity and their digital identity. So it's hard to even know how powerful those companies are.
Exactly.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
And some very powerful points being made by Lord Michael Farmer. Again, I really appreciate the epic things that this man has done. He works tirelessly every day in the House of Lords, really working to keep the family structure together and to really help everything from prison reform to just helping Britain by really focusing on the family, and some great ideas when it comes to digital censorship. So if you want to watch that full interview, you can do that on our website as well. It was an incredible 2-hour conversation, and what an incredible man. Just want to finish out. This is your last chance to make a comment, so put it in now. I get them right here, and I'm reading them out live. Do you think censorship is wrong, and why? Do you believe the fact checkers, and who checks the fact checkers? Do you think as an adult that you should have the right to consume any type of information that you want, or should you be protected from quote-unquote dangerous content? Do you trust our social media companies to tell you the truth? And finally, do we need better leadership? There's some great comments coming in here. I really appreciate these coming in. Some incredible stuff. Again, I can't read them all. There's so many, but it's amazing. Stephen Paul says, praying for you. Keep freedom of ideas heard. I appreciate that. Bradley Merchant says, if we don't fight back, we won't be living in the land of the free anymore. It's true. If you give away your civil liberties bit by bit, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be in a place that you won't even recognize anymore, like a science fiction movie. And then what will happen to your children? That's what I want to know. Paul on IG says, proud to be part of the London Real Army. I appreciate you, Paul. It's people like you that helped us build the Digital Freedom Platform. It's people like you that are going to help us become the next mayor of London. It's people like you that are going to help us change these ridiculous policies and restore our freedom of speech. So thank you, Paul. I appreciate you. We've got Dinah on Instagram saying, keep going, Brian. Don't stop. Look, I get the energy from all of you. That's how I get all my energy. Seriously, I tap into all your energy every day, and I've never felt so invigorated. I've never felt so nonstop in my life. It's amazing. So thank you. Actually, it's my honor to be able to do this for you. Takaja on Instagram says, this man done said my whole essay. I guess that means we're thinking the same way. I appreciate that. Zach Ken says, never stop. They hate you because you're educated and standing up for what's right. El McPherson, big shout out to El McPherson in Florida, says science-based decision-making. I appreciate you saying that, El. And that's really what we need here, science-based decision-making. Cipriano on Instagram says censorship is 100% wrong, and I don't trust the fact checkers. That's so right. We've got Ayesha Calligraphy on Instagram says, we want media by real people, for real people, who can talk to everyone at a human level. I will ask the Muslim community to vote for you. Thank you, Ayesha. I appreciate you. I really do appreciate your support. The Thief says, thanks, Brian. You are the lighthouse in the fog. We are out here. We hear you. Thank you so much. And finally, Carter Wilcox says, never stop fighting for voices to be heard. And I promise you, I will never stop fighting. And so I just want to close on the fact that for the next 6 months, we have one priority here at London Real, and that is to be your next mayor of London. And we believe that this is the most effective way that we can fight for freedom of speech. We think this is the most effective way that we can end digital censorship forever. With the power of this office, we can hold these companies to task. We could make changes here in London that would affect the rest of the world. We can make changes in these digital platforms that will affect America from London right here. And that's why I'm asking for global support to get us elected as your next mayor of London, because what we do here could easily pass over and be shown to work in New York City, in LA, in Madrid, in Paris, in Barcelona, in Tokyo, in Singapore. I honestly think that if we show the world how we can take a city like London with 9 million citizens and prove that we can fight back against digital censorship, and prove that we can get the city back to work safely, prove that we can create a proportionate response to the virus, to prove that we can make science-based decision-making work and put our health first, put science first, put education first, put our children first, we could show the whole world what it looks like for a city to do things right. Everyone's thinking it. Everyone I speak to, from taxi cab drivers to pub owners, to people in the hospitality industry, tourism industry, gym owners, they all say, Brian, how come our leaders seem to be making the opposite decisions in our interest? I say, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I stopped trying to figure out why a long time ago. All I know is that we need to step up and start making our own decisions. And that's what I promised to you, I pledged to you to do as your next mayor of London. On May 7th, we're going to start making changes. And we're going to start making intelligent changes that get this city back to work. Again, science-based decision-making, proportional response to the virus, and very importantly, freedom of speech is respected. Again, if we have the best ideas, we can openly debate them, and the best idea will rise to the top and be executed on. And that's marked the upward surge in human civilization for thousands and thousands of years. Why should we stop now? Just because we're being bullied by these trillion-dollar technology companies with their own leftist agendas that want to control our lives, want to control our information? No, we're not having it here in London. And if you want to be a part of this movement, join us. And we're going to go forward and enforce these plans. So thank you so much. Again, it's been an honor. I've been humbled by all the support that you're giving us to become the next mayor of London. But remember, we're doing this together. We are going to move into City Hall on May 7th. We're going to start making changes. And I mean we, all of us globally. And we can show the world with one test case here in London what the rest of the world will look like. If we do it right, it will start to have reverberations all around the globe. And we'll see other cities start to change the same way. And trust me, pretty soon, the world will be back to where we want it, and we can start moving forward and making incredible progress. So thank you so much. If you want to learn more about my detailed Transform London 2021 plan of attack, you can go to our website, brianformayor.london. You can sign up to be a volunteer. You can donate to our campaign and get swag. It's out. Coffee cups, pens, T-shirts, bracelets. We're sending it all out anywhere in the world. And again, this is a global effort. This is not just for people in London, not just for people in the UK. You can support us anywhere in the world, and we appreciate all of that support, the emails, the reposts on social media, the shout-outs, hashtag Brian for Mayor, anything you want to post out there. And again, I am here to serve you. That's my role as your next mayor of London. I'm here to listen to the citizens and to do what's in your interest. I'm excited for the challenge. I know that we can accomplish this task, but we're going to have to do it together. It's going to require sacrifice, discipline, accountability, ownership. But I'm confident we can do it together, and I'm excited to be your next mayor of London. Until then, keep the faith. Let's stay optimistic, but let's keep fighting against these forces that are trying to oppress us. I am confident we're going to win, and with your support, we are going to do that. All right? Thank you very much. I'll see you next time on Real Deal. Take care.
At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today. At London Real,